Here we go. uh, I I recall back in my earlier life, in my young life, I was Manish. I think that's where I should go with this. Manish. I was always a little large, more mature of a child. Um for my age during a time and era where we're still talking 60s, 70s and beyond. And I yeah, sexually. Um I think I was somewhat introduced to sex as a large, more mature type male child of the 60s slash 70s. Um and I think my first time out, little neighbor girl, I think her name was Renee. And she and I would, I had this little bedroom that was in the attic with the old kind of flooring, the wood flooring that was not necessarily finished. So the reason why I remember it not being finished is because we would go up and we would neck. She's a little older than me, and we get up there, we get naked, and we neck, and we go through the motions and whatnot. I wasn't uh, really sexually uh, adult yet. But we would go up there, we would go through the motions, and we would dry hump and the whole nine. And I'll never forget the landlord who also lived in the house uh, would come upstairs and hear us making a ruckus. And when they would try to open the door, I would jump up and slide up under the bed. I'll never forget the first time I did that. I ended up with splinters in my backside. Never forget those. I probably still got them in there. Um, you know, man, she was something else. I think that's where I wanted to go with all this. Excuse me for a second. I'll be right back. Ugh. Check on my food. So, yeah. So, I had to be like 8. She might have been like 10, 12. I was a big size for my age and whatnot. And I really got into it in her, and she really got into it in me. And we weren't really, hurting nobody outside of the mere fact that we was, you know, dry humping, and I was Manish. And I was about 8 years old. I was a large 8. I probably might have been the size of maybe 12, 14 at 8. And anywho, so my introduction to sex uh started off in somewhat of a playfulish, mannish kind of manner. Later on, I would test my skills and trying to hook up with babysitters and whatnot. And I think what started this is I remember Don't really quite remember the names, but there was this one girl who babysitted us that I talked out of her panties, and uh, it was the first time that I actually got into some real woman coochie. I'll never forget. I wasn't old enough to be busting a nut at all, but the mechanics were there, so I'll never forget. I slid in there, and I was like, "Ooh!" And next thing you know, but there wasn't nothing that can come out because there wasn't nothing made yet. But I'll never forget that. Uh, um, yeah, I was hooked. I was hooked. Manish. From that point on, I made it a kind of thing to try to corrupt each and every doggone babysitter and whatnot that came through, and I was Manish. Fast forward, uh, my early teens. My mom decided that she wanted her children to no longer be in this whole political kind of thing, and so we went down south, to live a regular life, and there's where life changed for me. Mom wanted to work in this nightclub, uh, and I would always roll with her when she would roll out. So when she rolled up to the club to ask if she could be, work in a nightclub, they happened to see me there, and they was like, "I'll tell you what, if you bring the boy with you, I'll let you work." Now, this nightclub was a very large nightclub in Atlanta, run by these two men. There was Three Finger Butch, and it was Buster who ran the front door, money guy. Buster was a retired, may have been one of the first black police chief cops in the South or whatnot. That ran the club, Oasis Ballroom, and I would run the coat check. It was run by those two men, and everybody else in that club was women, and they would run that. And Three Finger Butch, he would manage, and I was boy. Hey boy, hey boy, we need some more beer. Hey boy, go in there and clean up the bathroom. Hey boy, go down there and tell your mama she if she want to work, she need to get up and stop acting like she's at the show and this that and they get up here, tell her drinks are ready, this that and the other. And so we had a real interesting relationship of sorts. Um, while I recall a lot of those things, a lot of things that are coming back to my memory are the other parts. Uh, I recall one time I was online a while back on Yahoo 360 or whatnot, and we were out chilling, and these are little adult clubs and whatnot. And there was this older lady popped in there, and we were trying to be nice because there was an older lady up in there, and we didn't want to, you know. And she was like, "No, don't worry about me. When I was younger, I used to be wild. I had my wild times. Back when I went to Spelman, me and my roommate, we got so wild that we almost flunked out of college." And I was like, "Spelman, what year?" And she was like, "Oh, 77, 78 ish, 79, whatnot." I was like, "Well, if you was back in Atlanta during that time, and what but one big club. It was the biggest club in the South, Oasis Ballroom. I was like, well, if you know that, then you know about the Oasis." She was like, "Oh yeah, I know about the Oasis. That was our spot." I was like, "Really?" I was like, "Well, if you know the Oasis, then you know what, but two men that ran that club." "Oh yeah, I do know that. There was Buster on the front door, and there was Three Finger Butch. Ran the bar and the club on the inside, outside of Disco Joe and the MC and DJ and some other things." And Then she happened to mention, oh yeah, and there was the Indian boy who worked the coat check. I was like, you remember the Indian boy? She's like, yeah. And I was like, well, I was, before I could tell her who I was, she's went on with her story about how the Indian boy used to work the coat check, was also their guide, their hookup. And her roommate would hook up with this Indian boy who ran the coat check, and he would get him into all the little after hour clubs and everything after and whatnot. And that's where they found their level of corruption enough that they almost flunked out of Spelman. And then I turned around and I said, ma'am, I was that little boy. And things got awkward. And she was like, oh my God, oh my God. Because now she's looking at my age, she's looking at a lot of other things. And what I realized is that being large for my age and working there 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, many of the people there never really thought that I was too young to be there because I was there. And apparently, due to, their admission or whatnot, I guess, you know, um, I had a little carte blanche. So, she was like, yeah, he used to get us into all of underground after hour spots and this, that, the other, and blah, 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 blah. But I really didn't recall a lot of those memories. I can recall a couple of them, and I'm going to talk about some of them. Because, this is also a part of my sexual uh, introduction or whatnot. And so I remember how she mentioned how I used to get her into all the clubs and, as a master corrupter of sorts. And yet, uh, when I told her who I was, she kind of freaked out and she went all the way to the point of even going, oh my God, you mean to tell me my firstborn might be yours? I was like, well, now I don't remember them. I don't remember what kind of relationships I had with them. I remember that I had lots of people who I would hook up, like I hooked them up. But it's apparent that during that era is when I established my fetish for older women, and I dated, or if you want to call it dating, quite a few um, during that era. And I'm pretty sure that most of them had no idea that I was as young as I was. As you remember times that I would catch some of the seniors trying to act grown from my high school that I went to. And I'd have to point them out and say, yeah, they don't need to be here. They would get mad. And I'd end up fighting with them back at school on a football field or whatnot because I got them kicked out and whatnot. And they would question why I'm there and this and the other. But, wasn't no question the man that ran the spot was a cop. So, that wasn't up to. But it's where I got my leather introduction of life as well. I didn't think about these things until years later. I'm talking in the 2000s after 9/11 when finally settled back down and started getting back into, these adult lifestyles. And I started reading up on the leather lifestyle and things of that nature. One of the things that stood out about that in my story is how initially, you know, my name was Boy, and the leather lifestyle, for, dominance, they would train to, um, become a dominant and whatnot. And they start off as Boy, and then they work their way into Sir, and then they work their way into Master and whatnot. And I didn't think much of it, but when I read about it, I was like, hey, that's kind of like what happened to me. Because what I do remember is that on my 16th birthday, a couple of the other owners of the other spots and whatnot that I frequently known was like, oh, it's the boy's birthday. Well, how about this? We're about to go up to New York. Well, how about we take him with us? I'll never forget that because they swooped me up. Three Finger Butch was like, hey, told my mom, he's like, hey, you don't mind if the boy goes with them, for his birthday, this, that, and that. She's like, well, can I work? And she's like, yeah, you can work because, technically speaking, they would always uh, extort her. If she wanted to work, she had to bring me. Here, I'm going to school and doing all this other stuff. But, if my mama wanted to make that money, I had to be a part of that. So be it. And so they agreed and they took me to New York. I'll never forget because when we went all the way to New York, they was talking all this stuff about their relationship dynamics and whatnot, and it was going in one ear and coming out the other because I really wasn't really. But as I read up on these polarities and lifestyles and whatnot, it makes sense. Excuse me. Later on, as I sat back and they were like, well, I'm married to them, but I top with them and I'm a bottom to them and this to the other. And I was, yeah, whatever. But that weekend, my 16th birthday, we went up there. The first place we went was Studio 54. I didn't know it was Studio 54. It's a club. We walked in, we came out, and it was like the doorman knew us and everything. There wasn't no line or nothing. We walked in, we went straight to the VIP thing. It was like a scene from Boogie Nights. We got up in there and a couple of people recognized them and they were like, hey, let's go out and party and whatnot. And from there, we left there and we went to Plato's Retreat. Now, we've been there. And what I remember is that weekend was long and the partying and whatnot that went on was very adult. And we went to that club after Studio 54. We were at Plato's Retreat. Never even thought about the fact that they paid for membership for us to go in there, and it was a nice little bit of money, chunk of change. But in there, I really hadn't really recalled the place until I was watching the movie Night Shift, and it was filmed. A couple of the scenes were filmed in that place, and I remember the bath area and the little rooms and whatnot, and a couple of scenes, and I was like, oh. And then I remembered how they would talk to me about what was going on with people and whatnot there. And this person was doing this, and these people were their people, and this, that, and the other. I didn't think much of it. All I knew is that it was one unbelievable experience. And I would go as far as to say that, yeah, my 16th birthday, I became a man like you would not believe. And we were there for 32 hours. I remember we were there for 32 hours. I also remember that when it was all over and we were on our way back, I slept the whole way back home. But when I got back, I noticed that they stopped calling me boy. They start calling me sir. And they called me sir so much that it caught on, and I would actually go back to school and write my name with sir. I became Sir Hafiz and the whole night. I didn't think much of it, but that was what it was. At that point, uh, Three Finger Butch one night was at the bar on a slow night. There was this other lady was over there. Apparently, it was familiar, and he said, "Well, we need to get the young sir, uh, you know, um, uh, get him his feet wet and whatnot." And so he introduced me to this lady, and she came over and she wrote her name down and her number and reached in her purse and pulled out a spare key. And she said, "When you are ready, I'll be of service to you when you're ready." And I was like, really? Now here it is summertime. And, me and my mom, we was cool, my brother and sister, younger and the whole nine. And, we were cool people and whatnot. And so I, tested out this little thing. And I said, hey, Ma, you mind if I go over a friend's house and stay for a couple of weeks? I'll be all right. And their parents is cool with it. And she was like, well, you going to be going to work? And I was like, yeah, I'll go to work. She's like, okay. Because in her mind's eye, if she didn't have to feed me every day, that really took a lot of the pressure off. We had a really interesting relationship, and I'll get back to that someday soon. But I digress. And I'll never forget called her and told her I was on our way. She told me how to get there. It was out by Greenbriers kind of way, and got on the bus and I went out there and walked through the door. The key worked. Walked in and she was there and very formally, "Hi, sir. I'm here to serve you and be of service, and everything here is available to you." And got in a submissive position in the whole nine. And I was like, "Really?" Um, and everything was cool. I mean, I was really spoiled, because here I was, for the first time, I had a 32-year-old woman that was in service to me as a dominant. And I had no idea what a dominant was. All I knew is that this was great. And so, a couple of days went past and I'm sitting around there, summertime. I ain't got really much going on. So I decided I'm going to mow her grass for her. And I'll go out and grab her lawnmower and I'm mowing her grass. And a little girl comes out, a little overly nosy girl. A little, she went to MD Collins, a little high school out that direction. She's a little fast ass. And she was really overly noticed. "Hey, how you doing? What you doing over here?" This, that, and the other. Now, fast forward. Now, I realized what was going on, but I didn't then. And so she was all up in my business and whatnot. And I was like, "Why you all up in my business?" And this and the other. She's like, "Well, you stand over there. Who is she?" I'm like, "Well, that's my aunt." Okay, that's my aunt. And so she was coming back home and she happened to see me and this girl from the neighborhood that she lived in talking. And it ruffled her to the point where she stormed in, parked, stomped up the stairs. And, before she went in the door, she was like, "May I see you inside, like now?" And I was like, "Okay." So I'm wondering what this thing is about between her and this attitude. But the girl, she was kind of like in one of those kind of smirky things. Come to find out later that they had a ongoing thing from, the other past people that she went through and how she seemed to have enjoyed, finding out who these freaky people were that she would mess up their, her flow or whatnot. And so when I walk in, she's livid, and she's, "If I catch you out there with these young ass girls, this, that, and the other, I'll kill you, this, that, and the other." And I was like, okay, I knew enough about this submission stuff and whatnot to know that this chick came totally out of pocket and this didn't seem like fun anymore. And that from what it was that I saw in her attitude and whatnot, I realized this is some BS. I ain't signing up for this. So as she left and stormed back out to clear her head, packed my stuff, left our key in the mailbox, locked the door, took my butt home. I took my butt home so early in the process, hey y'all, that um my mom was even mad. "You back so soon?" I was like, "Yeah, Ma, you don't want to hear about it." This and she was like, "All right." And then it started the calls. She would call. And I would be like, "Mom, I don't want to talk to her. She's, who's this person calling you? You don't want to talk to you. You don't want to talk to her." I'm like, "Mom, I just don't want to talk to her." So finally, uh, she gets a little tired of having to intercede. And she's like, "Look, lady." She's like, "Look, young lady. Um, he don't want to talk to you. Stop calling here." "I don't care. I love him. Tell him I'm sorry. This, that, and the other." And she's back and she's like, "Look, then all of a sudden, something caught her. And she said, "You know what? How old are you, young lady?" She's like, 32. Mom hit the roof. She's like, 32. "Do you know how old he is?" "I don't know. I know, but I don't care. I love him. Tell him I'm sorry." This, that, and the other. She's, "Look, I will take you to jail. I don't care. I'll go to jail. Anything else." And so she hung up the phone and she turned around to me and she said, "Look, you need to stop playing with these older women. They're crazy." And I had to agree with her, and my religious mother did something that was very out of the normal. The next day, I came in and she had literally left a family pack of condoms on the damn dressers. I was like, "What's up with this?" And she was like, "Look, I want to have nobody coming up here talking about this your baby, this, that, and the other. You stay away from the older women and you wrap it up and the whole nine." And I got it. I understood it, you know, and yeah, but I'm a young kid. I'm a young, old looking kid that's working at a nightclub, and the whole nine. And so never really dealt back with her again because, I learned my lesson. I'll never forget. I went back to the club we were working, and Buster, Three Finger Butch, was cracking jokes. He's like, you learned your lesson. So what you learned? And I was like, I learned that she got this shit twisted. And he's like, all right, good, And I didn't think much about this lifestyle stuff. Matter of fact, this lifestyle stuff didn't really even make sense until 20, 30 years later. After 9/11, damn near, when I'm searching the interwebs and I'm starting to learn about this leather thing. So in the process of me having this talk and telling people that, hey, I'm in this lifestyle. And they were like, well, I hear what you're saying, but we don't have a recording of, people down south, into this leather lifestyle thing. This is something that we only do, gay bars, this and the other, so and so and so and so. But I do remember that my life was pretty much chiseled into a manner of being more open, poly, uh, kinky, and whatnot. Um, and I just didn't know that the things that I had molded my life into being was actually a lifestyle until years past that, and I was already deep into it. And so, for a lot of the people that I ran into in the lifestyle that was really upset about my being in there, it was tough titty for them because, well, here I was, and I realized, I'm this, I'm leather, I'm into this. Uh, so along with that, from 15, 16 on, up until I was in my mid 40s, literally, I rarely, if ever, dated or dealt with anyone my age or younger. Uh, I was just naturally attracted to older women. And that didn't really change until I got into my 50s. And by that time, while I would have loved to have continued that, it got a little too uncomfortable because I was not really, and still to this day, not really comfortable in feeling like, I was going to, because at 50, when you're accustomed to dealing with women much older than you at that point was elderly. And I was not feeling, going to senior housing or something like that to scoop the old great grandmothers. So to this day, I've had so much of a difficulty personally with just the thought or of of dating someone my age or younger. And the more that I've tried as of late, the more that I realize why, because they were nothing like the older women that I've grown accustomed to, and yet it's all I had. And yeah, that's a stamp of my discomfort and my problem nowadays because, yeah, they just weren't. I mean, there's something really awkward when you sit back at almost 60 and you tell somebody that women your age, are not really something that you're attracted to due to their immaturity and whatnot. And people are like, you know, uh, but that's a real thing. Um, uh, and so all of this little short tidbit of what I'm going with this is just to just talk about how, due to my advanced introductions and whatnot so early from a sexual nature or whatnot, it's complicated my existence as an older elder person now, due to the mere fact that I'm not vanilla. Vanilla is that regular heterosexual kind of moral kind of thing, and I'm so kinky and into some other things that it's really not even fun to even try to, because it's just way, oh, you too wild for me. Well, that's only you right, you know. And so manage, been managed all my life, but I've been managed with a purpose. And I think right now where we're at in society is the mere fact that there's so few people that can understand the depths of that, because it really came with some other things that a lot of people today are very conflicted with. So I kind of wanted to get out this little tidbit and let this ride. Sucks to be me, because here I am at this single state, and with all that I know and things like that nature, it really honestly frustrates me to even think about the possibility of actually partnering with people that are really just ready to be in more of a retired kind of monogamous mentality. And I'm poly and kinky and some other things that could be a benefit if it wasn't for the fact that most people are not even comfortable even thinking about testing that market because yeah. So that's another little bit of my diary of a black man stuck in a black man's body. I'm pretty sure that there's some white hippie folks that can recall similar portions of this, but what makes this different is the mere fact that yes, I am a black man stuck in a black man's body. And this is a very unusual story. And for that reason, stand by. There'll be more of it coming. I just need to get this off of my head tonight. You good?